Cold mornings, frosty windows. Yup, it's that time of year. So treat yourself and start your day with a cup of fresh roasted Sterling Roastery coffee, sourced from around the world and roasted multiple times a week for unbeatable freshness. It's the kind of warm-up every sports fan deserves this holiday season. And right now, you can win one of 3 $50 Sterling gift cards, perfect for gifting or building your own winning lineup of Java in the morning. Enter today at sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways so you can wake up, warm up, and Sterling up this holiday season. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways.
125 defining moments, one legendary league. This is Darren Hayes of the Pigskin Dispatch podcast, and a great book is out right now, NFL Moments, 125 icons and stories that define the NFL. It's a definitive visual history of the National Football League, packed with iconic images and untold stories behind the game's biggest plays and its greatest players. From the early legends like Red Grange to today's stars like Patrick Mahomes, this book is a touchdown for fans who crave more than just stories. So give your football bookshelf a Hall of Fame upgrade or snag a holiday gift for that NFL history buff on your shopping list. Pick up NFL Moments, available now at your favorite bookseller.
This is Basketball History 101 with Rick Loayza.
Welcome back to award-winning Basketball History 101, part of the Sports History Network. I am your host, Rick Loayza, and this is the podcast where we bring to life some of the forgotten stories from basketball history. We are bringing old-school basketball to a new-school audience, and today we bring you the story of Bill Laimbeer's attitude. Now, if you're old enough to have watched the NBA back in the 1980s, then you certainly remember Bill Laimbeer. He was the player that basketball fans outside of Detroit just loved to hate. He was an expert in getting into the heads of his opponents and opposing fans. It seemed that when he was on the road and really got the fans going, that he thrived on it. It was like he fed off of the boos of the opposing fans. The hatred from the opposition gave him strength, seemingly. You could tell that he really loved it. Now, while Isaiah Thomas may have been the captain and the leader of the Detroit Pistons, it was Laimbeer who was the emotional foundation. He set the tone for the infamous Bad Boys Pistons. You could even see it when the Pistons came out of the tunnel for the start of every game. It was Laimbeer who was in the front, leading his teammates into the opposing arena. He came out with a scowl on his face like he was about to take revenge on the opposing players for some previous injury. And I was one of those Laimbeer haters. I am a Lakers fan, and I grew up in Southern California during the 1980s. I was first introduced to the NBA by Magic Johnson and the Showtime Lakers, and they were going to the finals almost every year back then to take on the Philadelphia 76ers or the Boston Celtics. But by the end of the 1980s, their opponent in the finals was the Detroit Pistons, the Bad Boys. And I remember that one of the Lakers fans carried a sign that said, "Good wine is better than lame beer." As an adolescent, I thought that was one of the most clever signs I'd ever seen. At one point, he had the nickname of His Heinous. When I started to think about Laimbeer, I had assumed that he must have grown up in a rough neighborhood where he had to fight off bullies for his own survival. Or maybe he was the bully who would go around punching other kids if they did not cough up their lunch money. I always thought that something was really wrong with this guy. I mean, it is one thing to foul hard and play aggressively, but he was doing things that were completely unnecessary, like running back down court and purposely running into Michael Jordan just to play some sort of psychological warfare. Or the time against Boston where he lost his balance while fighting for a rebound and just pulled Larry Bird down with him and acted like it was an accident. But everyone knew that he pulled Bird down to the ground on purpose. It seemed like he was simply a menace for the sake of being a menace. So I was surprised as anyone to find out that he did not grow up in a rough neighborhood. He grew up in the high-end suburb of Chicago, but then moved to Palos Verdes and went to Palos Verdes High School in California. And if you do not know, the city of Palos Verdes is a very expensive city in the LA area. The city might ring a bell because during the LA wildfires of early 2025, the city of Palos Verdes suffered considerably when hundreds of homes burned down, including the home of Steve Kerr's mother. So not only did Bill Laimbeer grow up in an upscale neighborhood, his father was a high-level business executive who eventually became a CEO. It was actually a joke among NBA players in the 1980s that Laimbeer was the only guy in the league who made less money than his own father. So how did a guy who grew up with that kind of wealth become such a hated player? Unfortunately, there is really no good answer to that. In interviews, Laimbeer admits that for as long as he can remember, he just had to win every game he played. It could be basketball, baseball, checkers, Monopoly, you name it. If there was a competition, then he had to be the victor. Losing was not an option for him. While playing board games with his sister when he was a kid, if he had fallen behind or it became obvious that he was about to lose the game, he would sometimes just knock the entire board to the ground to stop the game. That way, he technically did not lose the game because the game never actually finished. It seems that he was born with an attitude that he had to win by any means necessary, which explains all of the elbows, the pinching, the hard fouls, and sometimes even injuring other players. According to Laimbeer himself, he was not internally trying to be the villain or a bad guy, but once the game started, it was like something just took over. To his credit, he did not fight it. He learned to embrace it and accept that he was the villain of the NBA, and he was perfectly good with that reputation. As long as his team was winning, he would accept almost anything. But his path to the NBA was not an obvious one. Even though Laimbeer was a 4-time NBA All-Star, his road to the NBA was not typical. He played his college basketball at Notre Dame University, where he averaged just 7 points and 6 rebounds per game. But it made sense because he played alongside future NBA players Kelly Tripucka, Orlando Woolridge, and Bill Hanslick, all guys who would have successful NBA careers. He was drafted in the 3rd round of the 1979 NBA draft. Now, most players drafted in the 3rd round do not even make the team, and he didn't. So he went off to play for Pinti Inox of the Italian League. In Italy, he was the star of the team with 21 points and 12 rebounds per game, and they loved him there, and he was able to regain his confidence as a player. After being the star of the team in high school, but not the star of the team in college, it was nice for him to again be the team's leading scorer. So after his one season in Italy, he was given another shot with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and this time he made the team. So while he had accomplished his dream of playing in the NBA, he was on an awful team. The team only had 28 wins against 54 losses. It completely frustrated Laimbeer that the other guys did not play the game with the same intensity with which he played. He could not get over it, but he also kept his mouth shut since he was a first-year player. He just continued to work hard and play hard, the only way he knew how. Well, for his second season, the team was even worse. They won only 15 games in that second year with the Cavaliers. Only 18 games into that season, the Cavaliers had fired their head coach for the second time. Seriously, the Cavaliers fired 2 head coaches in about 5 weeks. They then hired their 3rd head coach of the season, and that 3rd coach was an assistant from Philadelphia, and he had his first opportunity to be the head man of an NBA team. And that coach's name was Chuck Daly. He had no more success than the other 2 head coaches did. Daly went 9-32 for the games that he coached, and then was fired before the season ended. Daly became familiar with Laimbeer's game. In an effort to improve the team, the Cavaliers traded Laimbeer to the Detroit Pistons, where he became an immediate starter on the team and doubled his scoring and rebounding in Detroit. He also connected with a couple of other players that knew how to play with intensity. One was his old college teammate Kelly Tripucka. The other was his new point guard, Isiah Thomas. It was with Thomas that Laimbeer found a kindred spirit. He was now playing on the team where intensity was the norm, and he loved it. There was just something about Isiah Thomas that Laimbeer felt a kindred spirit with. Thomas was raised in poverty on the west side of Chicago. Laimbeer grew up in luxury in Southern California. But on the Pistons, they were brothers. They were both guys that would do whatever it took to win basketball games. But the Pistons were not quite there yet. In the summer of 1982, the Detroit Pistons hired a new head coach, Chuck Daly. Daly had already coached Laimbeer, as I mentioned, when they were together in Cleveland, and having Daly as the coach opened up Laimbeer's game. He was averaging nearly 14 points and 12 rebounds per game under Daly. Laimbeer also went to 3 straight All-Star games as soon as Daly arrived in Detroit. For a guy who was a 3rd rounder and probably should have not been in the league at all, going to 4 All-Star games in his career was something that few experts would have predicted. And over the next few years, the Pistons added Joe Dumars, Adrian Adrian Dantley, John Sally, James Edwards, and the always entertaining Dennis Rodman. The Pistons had everything they needed to make some real runs at the NBA championship. In 1988, the Pistons had finally overcome the Boston Celtics to go to the finals for the first time, where they lost in 7 games to the LA Lakers. But they came back in 1989 and 1990 and won back-to-back NBA championships. And then they created their bad boys image. They were ready to take your head off if you tried to drive in for a layup. They had the most intense defense in the league and they took no prisoners. Fans in Detroit waved bad boys flags. The Pistons completely adopted the villain role in the NBA and put everyone on notice. They were not there to make friends. They were not guys that were going to give you high fives, share hugs, and dap up opposing players. When the game was over, they were going to simply leave the floor knowing that they had vanquished their enemy. And Laimbeer was the face of the bad boys. The thing that made Laimbeer's game different in the 1980s was that he was probably the only center in the entire league who could shoot the three-pointer. I do not remember any other centers back then pulling his defender out to the perimeter the way that Laimbeer could. He probably would have been very successful in today's three-point happy NBA. But like every other player, he eventually had to retire. His final season was riddled with injuries as he only played 11 games. And now it was time for a second career. He partnered with his CEO father to start Laimbeer Packaging Company, which made cardboard boxes. But he really wanted to get back into the game. By 2002, he was hired by the Detroit Shock of the WNBA to become their head coach. And the players were worried that Laimbeer was going to turn the Shock into a female version of the Bad Boys. Some people were already starting to refer to the team as the Bad Girls, assuming that this was the way that Laimbeer was going to coach, and nothing could have been further from the truth. While his intensity never let up, he was not trying to turn the Shock into the Bad Girls. They were playing sound, fundamental basketball, and when he took over the team, they were a dismal 0-10. By his second season with the Shock, they were the WNBA champions. In fact, they would win 2 more championships over the next few years. He now had 3 championships as a head coach. And I'll give the guy this. He wins. And isn't that what sports is about at the professional level? Winning? Well, today Laimbeer is 68 years old and semi-retired. But he was an unforgettable player. You may not have liked him, but you will never forget him. He still brings up feelings for me when I think about some of those intense battles he had with the Lakers, Bulls, and Celtics. And I will end with this. Bill Laimbeer got as much out of his ability as a basketball player as anyone who ever played in the NBA. He always left everything on the court. Well, that is it for today. Join us next week when we share another story from basketball history. That's next time on Basketball History 101, part of the Sports History Network, the headquarters of Sports Yesteryear. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com to find out more about this and other sports history podcasts. If you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcast. And check out our page on Facebook. It's called Basketball History 101 Podcast. There you will find short historical posts, and I'll also announce there when new episodes come out. I want to thank my producer and editor, Jacob Loayza. Join us each week as we continue to mine the history of basketball for more great stories from the past. Take care and see you soon.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. You did not see their faces on the Wheaties boxes, nor did they have the headlines, but they were breaking barriers, one pitch at a time. The integration of minor league baseball, a history and player register, 1946 to 1959, by Rick Swain and Gary C. Fink, shines a light on the overlooked heroes who paved the way for future legends. From dusty bus rides to hostile crowds, these players fought for a place in a game that did not want to see them win. More than history, it's a tribute to courage, perseverance, and the power of a game to change. Honor their legacy today and grab a copy of The Integration of Minor League Baseball at your favorite bookseller.